Business is a team sport. We get everyone involved in the financials and we talk about it. We communicate quite often about it and make sure that the team is aware of where things are at. We have a scoreboard that shows where we're at each month for gross profit, where we are for the year. And we forecast out 2 months in advance so that we can kind of see what's coming, as opposed to the way we used to run the business, and most businesses are run, is in the rearview mirror.
Welcome to the Landscapers Business Growth Podcast. My name is John Giacato, and I'm your host. We've got Doug McDuff here with us today. Doug is the president of Landscape America in Massachusetts. He's also very active in the landscaping community and is a past president of the Massachusetts Association of Landscape Professionals. Doug, thank you very much for joining us on the Landscapers Business Growth Podcast.
Yeah, John, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Cool. So tell us, our listeners a bit about Landscape America.
So Landscape America was established in 2006. So my brother and myself own it. My brother Andy McDuff and I, we're 50-50 partners. At this point, we are just about $8 million in revenue. We've got about 55 employees in the landscape season. Snow's a big part of our business, so we will flex up to 150 people during a snowstorm. And we're located in Rentham, Mass. So we're about maybe 45 to 50 minutes south of Boston and about 30 minutes north of Providence, Rhode Island. We service commercial clients on the landscape and the snow side, mostly in eastern Massachusetts, but we do dip into Rhode Island and a little bit into southern New Hampshire as well.
Gotcha. And you don't do any residential, right? You're completely commercial. Is that correct?
We are completely commercial, which is new for us. So we spent the majority of our lifespan so far in the residential market, and just last year we sold the last piece of that business, the residential maintenance, to a local landscaper. And so it was probably like I'll call it a 5-year journey to exit the residential and go into 100% commercial. We can get into that further if you'd like to, but so we are now currently just focused on commercial landscape and snow plowing.
And what made you and your brother decide to switch over to just commercial? I mean, I know a lot of landscapers would like to get more commercial work, but I think it's more rare to actually see a landscaping company just do only commercial work and no residential at all.
Yeah, so there's a few things. I guess I can touch on the first one. Is more of a personal thing for me. I was the predominant salesperson for the design build work we did. So we did a lot of backyard makeovers, entire residential landscapes, anything from a $50,000 job up to $500,000 in people's yards. And so we were doing driveways, outdoor kitchens, patios, pergolas, plantings, irrigation, lighting, you name it, walls. We did pretty much anything on the outside of the house in regards to landscape design and installation. And so I was selling $3 million a year, sometimes a little bit more than that, sometimes a little bit less, but in that range every year. And it was really taking a toll on my focus on the business itself, on being able to run the business effectively, and kind of wear that hat of the owner and deal with the financials and the strategy and the vision and the overarching like coaching and mentoring of our team. So I did hire someone to take over that role for us, and she did a great job, but it was just dragging me into the equation so frequently when we would sell to a big project. A lot of times I would go on the final sale or I would be at the introduction or whatever. So I was somewhat involved, and anytime there was an issue or a larger decision to be made, I was pulled into the project, or I was pulled into the sale or whatever. So it was taking away a lot of my time and energy on growing the business, which is really what I wanted. In my main goal was to grow a successful business that wasn't centered around me and didn't involve me being involved in every decision and every sale and so forth. And so that sounds selfish, but that was a driver in it. And I don't actually believe it is entirely selfish, because while my life is definitely better now that we've made this shift, I think our team in general is better. Our culture's improved. Um, and I think there's upward mobility for a lot of our team at this point because we're growing and scaling in a way that we wouldn't have and couldn't have, to be honest with you, in the business that we had before. So that's the personal side. The other thing I noticed, we were I would say like a larger design build player in our market, and there was a ton of smaller companies that were doing a really good job at that type of work. But then there was a huge gap between us and the next biggest company out there that was doing a lot of residential design build. I'm talking like we were doing, like I said, maybe $3.5 million, or $4 million in that range of design build work, and the next biggest company was doing like 50 million. And so I'm like, there's really like not a lot of companies that have been successful at scaling this type of a business in a way that made sense to me and didn't involve the owner. And even that company that I was referencing, the owner was super involved in it. And even at 50 million, he was making a lot of decisions that I to be honest, didn't want to be making in the business at that time. I would have much rather focused on higher level things than the minutia and the details of the day to day. So it didn't feel like it was a growth oriented business for us. It didn't feel scalable. And I looked at the commercial space, and we were doing some commercial work, and I'm thinking like, this doesn't take a ton of my time. Like I don't have to focus a lot on the side of the business. It just kind of does its thing. Once we had a good team doing the maintenance work, we had a good team managing the accounts, it seemed very repeatable to me. And I looked at the marketplace, and I'm looking at, obviously our industry is super fragmented. There's a whole lot of little companies doing 1 and 2 jobs here and there. But then there's the big companies, the Bright Views, the national companies that are out there. And the PE money was coming into the industry a little bit at this point. I'm talking, 2018 or so. So we started to see a little bit of that roll up stuff happening back then. And there wasn't a lot of players that were in the middle between those big nationals and the little tiny guys. But I saw a huge need for it in that space because it was scalable. I felt like we could grow it. And also there was a lot of client demand, looking for companies that were going to be reliable, would return phone calls, would do a good job, but also could cover a regional space. Not necessarily national, not covering like East Coast to West Coast, but maybe covering all of Eastern Massachusetts. If they had 5 or 6 buildings from Northern Mass to Southern Mass, a lot of these smaller companies were like, hey, we can only do this one, but we can't tackle the one up north, or we can't tackle this one out west, or we can't take on your portfolio in Rhode Island or New Hampshire or whatever. And so it seemed like there was a void there that we could fill easily, and we could do a really good job and bring that residential touch where we were like high touch with customers, super communicative. We could bring that to the commercial space and do a really good job for our clients, and also at the same time grow, so our team had opportunities to kind of take that next step and climb the ladder, if you will.
Okay, so 2 things I'm hearing. One is that you wanted to, I guess, be able to work more on your business as opposed to in your business, right? And the design build is there's a lot of custom stuff to that. It's not something you can really productize or create a standard operating procedure around. Is that correct analysis, or would you say that's wrong?
In my experience, I know there's people out there that have done a really good job at making that business scalable, but I would argue it's much more difficult to do that, and I think most business owners that are in that space would agree it's really tough to duplicate the things that an owner does in that world, where closing the sales or being that final decision maker or setting up the systems, leading the team. Every job's different. Every job has a different aspect to it with the millions of things we do on the design build side of things. And it's also hard to train people to be effective on that side, and to bring someone into that and teach them all those things that you do on the design build side. Whereas on the maintenance side, there's just less things to train upon. So I think you can speed someone up to being super efficient and capable in a shorter amount of time. Just showing them how to use a string trimmer appropriately, teaching them safety, mower operations, and in general, like the horticultural side. But you're not dealing with how to install pavers, a million different types of pavers, right? Like you can install porcelain, you can install these concrete, you can install bluestone. Like there's and each one's a little bit different. That times the hundreds of things you do on the design build side just makes it more complicated.
Right. Okay. And so you're doing something that's unique, I think. It's called open book management. I wanted to kind of talk about that a bit. Can you maybe kind of summarize it for our listeners and talk about how you implement it, and what have you kind of seen as the pros and cons of using that?
Yeah, I'd love to. It's something I'm really passionate about. I think it's changed a lot in our business, and I'm happy to share our experience with it. So back in, I think it was 2019, we started practicing open book management. And we used to say before that we were open book. We'd share our financials with our team. And there's a lot of mystification in the industry around that term, open book. A lot of people will say, yeah, we're open book, just because they share some or a little or maybe a lot of their financials. But the true open book practice was coined by Jack Stack. And Jack Stack wrote a book called The Great Game of Business, and it was a study on his company and how he grew this company, SRC Holdings, and how they saved the organization when they were in some really hard times and they were going to lose this factory. The whole community worked there, and they needed to make payroll every week. And so he said, the only way we're going to do this and be able to make payroll and repay the bank is we're going to teach our team how to understand the financials and teach them what their actions do every day and every hour to help drive our financial growth and drive success. And it just caught with his organization. And so people started to really have that ownership thinking and ownership mindset when they were just going through. And I mean, it was a factory, so they were making, I think they were making engines and so forth. And so they were like, literally some of them were just drilling holes in metal, but they were learning how to do it efficiently and how it affected the bottom line of the business, and started to really take ownership in what they were doing. So anyways, that's Jack Stack started it. He wrote that book, Great Game of Business, and it caught. And there's a whole bunch of companies that you can look into that practice open book. And for us, we kind of liked the idea that business is a team sport, and that's a philosophy in open book. It's a team sport, and so everyone has a say, and everyone has a need in the business to want to do better and want to win, essentially, right? So if you think about playing a game of football, and if you were playing whatever sport, football, soccer, and you didn't have a scoreboard, no one would know if they're winning or losing. You wouldn't know what play to call, if at the last minute, if you were ahead or not. You wouldn't know whether to play defense or play offense, or put your best players on the field over here. There's a whole bunch of things that you wouldn't really be able to anticipate or understand. And quite frankly, like, what are you playing for then? If you're just playing for nothing, there's no score, it really takes the fun out of the game. And so we rely heavily on a scoreboard and open book management, and that philosophy is that the team needs to know what the score is, because they need to know how to interact and how to make a game plan up in order to win. And so a scoreboard is really important, and we have our financials forecasted to the team once a week. And so getting into like the nitty gritty of it, we have 8 managers in our company, and they meet once a week, every Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. It's the same meeting cadence throughout the whole year. We don't skip, we don't miss it. It's that day and that time every single week. And those 8 managers bring their financial numbers to the table for whatever they own in our meeting. I'll give you an example. So we have our different buckets of revenue. So we have landscape maintenance, we have snow, and we have enhancements. So those 3 buckets. So a different manager owns the revenue for each one of those, and then another manager will own the cost side for each of those. So one guy owns, or girl owns, the revenue for maintenance, another person owns the costs, which are the direct labor, the equipment, the materials, and the subcontractors. So they'll bring those numbers to the table, and we put it all in this big elaborate spreadsheet, and it tells us exactly how much gross profit we're going to be making, and we're forecasting this month and next month. So we're looking out 60 days into the future, and we're forecasting where we're going to land based on what jobs are sold and what's our labor look like and materials and all that sort of stuff. And it populates down into what our gross profit is per month, and then our team, entire team, the field team, foreman, everyone is aware of where we landed each week with our forecast, and they see where our gross profit is and what their bonus will be if we hit that gross profit, or if we miss it, they know where it is, so they can see on the scoreboard how much gross profit we're anticipating to generate each month, and their bonus is tied to that gross profit. So again, another example, if an employee has a job where they save 10 man hours on the job, and for easy math, I'll estimate the 10 man hours are worth $100 per hour in savings, and it's $1,000 extra to the gross profit. We're going to see that in our numbers, and we can then talk about it with the team and say, hey, Diego, great job. You saved 10 man hours on that. That added $1,000 to our bottom line. We all high five, we celebrate, we get excited, and like that's a big win. And everyone knows, like, all right, we just need a few more of those, and we'll be able to get a bonus this quarter. The opposite is if an employee accidentally backs over a backpack blower and destroys it. Well, there's $800 that's going to come off our bottom line. Destroyed the blower, we got to go buy a new one. Our bonus just dropped by $800. So, that's a negative effect of, your daily behavior, and, what are we going to do differently next time to avoid that accident? And do you understand, where the costs come from and so forth? So, so those are a few little examples, but ultimately it's business is a team sport. We get everyone involved in the financials, and we talk about it. We communicate quite often about it, and make sure that the team is aware of where things are at. We have a scoreboard that shows where we're at each month for gross profit and where we are for the year, and we forecast out 2 months in advance so that we can kind of see what's coming, as opposed to the way we used to run the business, and most businesses are run, is in the rearview mirror. You get your financials 15 days after the month closes, and you're looking at last month. At this point, you've already 15 days into the next month, and if you needed to make an adjustment, like, you're way behind. So now you're trying to play from behind all the time. You're looking in the rearview mirror as opposed to forecasting ahead of time. We know what's coming up. We know we have a gap in our sales, or we have less labor than we need, so we got to go hire someone, or there's a challenge on a job site coming up that's going to affect us in this way. So how do we mitigate that challenge? So does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, definitely. So
okay.
You're at 55 employees now. Would you have done this when you only had 8?
That's a really good question. So for me personally, I would say yes. Like, if I become a serial entrepreneur and ever start another business, I don't think I could ever run a business effectively without using this platform, without using open book management as a strategy and as a tool for the company. So when we were 8 people, would we have been able to implement it? I don't know.
Would you have been scared to implement it, to have provide that much visibility?
No. I was never. No, we did provide visibility. We just didn't know how to do it in a way that the team would understand it well enough to have it affect their daily behaviors. So we used to tell our team what our net profit was all the time, and we'd have goals centered around net profit, but we didn't have a great way of driving the bonus specific to net profit and making the team aware of what they did and how they could get there, like how they could get their bonus. So it was almost like things were in silos. Like, their bonus was in a silo and their net profit was in a silo. We were telling them what was going on. We just weren't connecting the dots for them. So it wasn't a thing that I was nervous about sharing the financials. I was always comfortable with that piece of it. Just thinking back to when we had a small group, I just don't know if there was enough of a need in our company to implement it at that point. But I do think it would be beneficial if someone, I think it's beneficial for anyone that is running a business to apply this methodology. I'm just thinking back to me personally at that size. I had so many other things going on in the business. I was trying to, work on different issues and understand how to manage and all this other stuff. It probably wasn't top of mind when I was at that size.
Gotcha. So do you set the performance goals in such a way that you maximize the chance of achieving them so that people do get their bonuses every quarter? Or do you set them aggressively so that sometimes they hit them, sometimes they don't?
Yeah, that's a great question, John. We set them up in a way. So first of all, we set our goals with our whole leadership team, so they have a say in our budget and where what we're targeting for a gross profit based on how many people we have, what we think we're going to have for sales, and what we want for net profit at the end of the year, and so forth. So it's not like Andy and I set the budget and then tell the team what to do. We do it as a whole group. But we do have in our sort of bonus chart that the team sees, we do have the target, like what our goal is, and then they can achieve more than that, and they can see how much more they'll make as a bonus if we hit higher numbers, and they also will see they can get a percentage of what the goal was if we miss down to a certain mark, right?
So it's not an all or nothing thing. There's tiers to the bonus structure. It's not just we either hit it as a company or we don't hit it as a company.
Exactly, and there has to be, because when you have something happen that's out of your control and you're missing the goal, and that, like let's say something happens in March and you're going to miss the goal for the end of the year, and we bonus per quarter, but the bonus gets bigger as you go through the year because obviously we have to collect money and understand what the whole year is going to bring. So the biggest opportunity to win a bonus is at the fourth quarter. And if you have something happen in March that's going to pull you way away from that goal, like let's say you lose a gigantic customer that is out of your control, like they sold the property or whatever, or that year we had COVID and the pandemic, like things changed drastically and it was outside of our control. So we still want the team to know that they can earn something. Maybe they can't get to the mark that we set, but we don't want them to just think, oh, this year is just like, we're not going to hit the goal, so why even try? Like, we're not going to get a bonus, so why try? So we still want the team to understand it regardless. We want them to know the financials and understand how they can affect it, and understand how we're doing as a business. Are we winning or losing? But we also want them to be able to achieve something. So that's why we have those percentages of the total bonus that they can still hit, as long as we're driving and trying to figure out a way to overcome the challenges that are in our way.
And I assume, correct me if I'm wrong, that it might be easier to do this as a commercial landscaping shop as opposed to a design build shop. Do you have more predictability and it's easier to kind of predict revenue, or is it not so much that you were steady on? Were you doing this even when you were doing the design build as well for residential customers?
We did, yeah. The first year we started it, it was 2019. I think at that point, 65% of our revenue was still design build. So we were predominantly a design build company. And so predictability wise, I think the maintenance is much more predictable because depending on where you are in the country, right? If you're in the Northeast like us, our season is March 15th through December 15th, give or take a couple weeks on either end. And our sales are in by April 1st at the latest, right? Or we might take a late or mid-season pickup, but for the most part, we kind of know what to expect. So you can draft out the whole year on the maintenance side. The enhancements are much different because those depend on the month and what you sell and so forth. So I would say commercial is more predictable than design build. But the challenge also is if you set your budget in the fall for next year, like we do, we try to have our budget completed by early winter, by middle of December. So we'll try to have our budget done and lock it in place before January 1st. And then if we miss a sales goal on the maintenance, the whole year looks off. And with design build, you can backfill quickly, right? You can get out there and you can sell another job, or you can grab a couple of team members and say, "Hey, get out there and let's blitz the market and go find some more work," and you can backfill quickly. In the commercial world, that it's not really the case, especially not in the Northeast, when we have specific times when we can sell the work and start the work and start those contracts. So our lead time for winning sales is less predictable than on the design build and the residential end for that matter.
Gotcha. And so, for the landscapers who are listening to this episode, you know, what have you done on the marketing side? Like, how are you doing prospecting? How are you doing marketing? Like, what does that look like? And especially for those landscapers who want to get more on the commercial side and do more commercial work, what have you seen as the best marketing channels for that type of customer?
It's much different than residential. On the residential side, we had a really strong presence of the work that we were doing on our website, and it's easy to show off that side on the construction and design build side. For commercial maintenance and snow, we look at our website as it's more of like air cover. It's got to be clean. It's got to represent us well. It's more focused on our team. It's more focused on our values. Maybe a little bit of our definitely about where we service and how far we can reach, and maybe a little bit about like the specific services. But it's more so about having something that's there that customers can look at and validate that we're real, like we're professional, we can do a good job, we exist, like we're clean, professional, all that sort of stuff. So the website's not as important in my mind as if we're doing the residential design build. It still has to be awesome. It just doesn't have to blow people's mind. So we shifted our website. We focus most of our marketing efforts on networking right now. So BOMA's been a really good organization for us, the Building Owners and Managers Association, and Boston has a strong chapter, and so we attend as many of those meetings as we can, and you've got a captivated audience. It's a lot of property managers, building owners, and they're typically at that one place at one time. You might have 160 to 100 potential customers there, and so it's just a matter of making your presence known, making your way around the room, being comfortable introducing yourself and having conversations with these people, and eventually making friends and getting trust, and eventually will lead to an RFP, hopefully, request for proposal by the customer. So it's a long game. It's not a quick thing that happens. It's taken us years to really get established there. But so BOMA's a big one. IFMA is another one. That's the facilities manager side. So that one's been good for us. We did do some chambers at the beginning of our commercial journey, and have found some success with that, but less so than BOMA. And then call blitzes. We do cold calling, like literally picking up the phone and just dialing neighboring accounts or specific accounts that we want to target. Drop-ins, we'll show up at customers' properties, and those are always challenging because you're trying to get around a gatekeeper. Someone's job is literally there to block you from getting to a decision maker, and so you have to really kind of figure out ways to navigate around the gatekeeper and get to whoever's making the decision. So a lot of it is boots on the ground effort. We still do online advertising. We do LinkedIn. That's a big one too. I should have mentioned earlier because that's important. Is we've got our Landscape America LinkedIn, but then all of our accounts managers and our business developer and myself have to be diligent about reposting and making sure that we're being strong and active and engaged with the LinkedIn community. So yeah, those are just a handful of the ways that we're focused on marketing and advertising.
But it's mainly traditional boots on the ground, networking, developing relationships, and some cold calling and traditional sales type approaches. You don't see a lot on the digital side in terms of inbound type Like there's not a lot of the opportunity really is on the outbound traditional sales type
Yeah,
side.
we
Yeah.
we every once in a while get a call in the office now. It's so crazy, but our phones used to be blowing up from residential clients, and now we might get a call every week or maybe once a month, depending on the season, for a commercial client looking for a bid for something. But it's typically um, it's typically the network and the boots on the ground effort, and the online ads and the website again is what we think of as like, it just validates our organization when they look at that stuff, where they get an ad, but that's that sort of second, third, or fourth touch point, right? And usually we find like we need 8 to 10 touch points in order for a customer to want to call or want to reach out to us and ask us to bid the work. And so, those website advertising, LinkedIn posts are going to help us to get there faster, but we got to start by being there with the client at networking events, or knocking on their door at their place of work, and introducing ourselves and leaving something behind so they know who we are.
Right. Right. So as we head into the winter months, you offer snow management for your commercial clients, right? What is your view? I know a lot of landscapers, view snow removal, plowing as a necessary evil. But what is your view on snow removal and offering snow management? And has it evolved over time? Is it different now than it was when you were, let's say, a much smaller company with much fewer employees?
It's definitely evolved, and we did have a little bit of that mindset back 10 or more years ago, that snow was something we just did. I don't know that we ever thought of it as a necessary evil, but we definitely said, if we have snow to do, it's great. But if we don't, like, we're going to be able to do some construction projects through the winter, keep our team going that way. And so it wasn't as important. But now our mindset is completely towards growing our snow business. We love the business. We love being there for clients. We love the way the clients react to us when we do perform snow for them, because we've gotten over the past 10 years really efficient at figuring out how to tackle snow operations. We do a really good job with making sure that our team's ready to go. We do snow trainings, and we buy the right equipment. We follow all the right processes and so forth. So it's become a really good part of our business, and we've grown it, I think, pretty well the past 4 or 5 years. This year we had a really good sales growth year, so we just need Mother Nature to cooperate for once. We've had 2 light winters in the Northeast, and so this year we're hoping we're going to get at least an average winter, or what we're used to as an average winter, maybe like 45, 50 inches in the middle of our market. In the northern market, that's more like 55, and south of our market is like in the high 30s. So we'll see what happens this year, but our team loves snow. Our managers love snow. Andy and I love it. Like we've always been happy out, taking care of the work in the middle of the storms, and so it's a fun thing for us. But we also love the way that the clients react to the way that we perform snow, because we do get some really good survey results out of our customers, during the middle of the season or towards the end of the season, because there's been less dependable people out taking care of the snow in other instances. So we just really focus on communication with them and making sure that they know what to expect before the storm. We communicate during the storm, we communicate after the storm, and so that's led to some good growth on that side of the business for us.
So tell me a little about your recruiting side and how you and I assume, motivating somebody to, how do you build this kind of goes into culture as well, but how do you build a culture of people who love doing snow, who are happy to wake up at 3 a.m. and be doing snow? How do you build that culture, and how do you hire for that culture to find the right people and to find motivated people?
Well, open book has certainly helped in a lot of ways, because we have some of our most profitable months in the winter, and so the team sees that. And so I would say for our existing team members that have been around for a long time, they've seen a big shift we used to come out of the winter $250,000 in the hole, and now we come out and we're usually largely profitable in April because of any snow or ice situations we have during the months of January, February, March. It just, snow can be a profitable business, and if you handle it right, you're going to come out of the winter in a great spot. And so our team's seen the financials and understanding that piece of it. It drives them to want to be involved in that success. We've gone through a cycle where we've had to let some team members go because they didn't want to participate in snow, and they just wanted to be with the landscape season. And for us, we're a 12-month company. We want to service our clients 12 months out of the year, and so we need the team that's going to be there with us to do that as well. So we've had a little bit of fallout with some of those team members, and that's okay. But we talk about snow in the hiring process, and we make sure everyone knows that this is like a big part of the business, and we're excited about it. We want you to be excited about it too. And if that sounds great to you, then you're in. If you don't want to participate in snow, it's probably not going to work out here because you're not going to fit into our core values if that's the case. And so I think it's just a conversation at the beginning of the relationship with our team to let them know what the expectations are. And with the commercial space being our only focus, it's pretty easy to loop that in, right? I think most of our team, most of our customers know, if you're going to do landscaping in the Northeast, you're going to want to do the snow work as well.
Right. Okay. And so, I noticed that you guys have Massachusetts certified landscape professional certified landscapers, right? Have you how do you view certifications in general in the landscaping industry, and what role has having that certification played, if any?
The company that Andy and I worked for before we started Landscape America was very education based and was very focused on making sure team members were getting certifications. It was a tree company. It was called Hartney Grandmont, and they still exist, and they're a great organization. But they kind of pushed us to get these certifications, and so naturally, when Andy and I started Landscape America, I think I already had my arborist certification, and we went and got our MCLP, or Massachusetts Certified Landscape Professional certification, like the first winter we started in our business. And so from there, we would just encourage our team to take the exam and pass that test and gain that certification. So it kind of was one of the foundational pieces of us starting out the business. And we both went to school for landscape contracting at the Stockbridge School of Agriculture, which is at UMass Amherst. And so the tie-in there was the professors at Stockbridge helped with the exam for the Massachusetts Association. So, we knew about the certifications through college and so forth too. So, but we've just brought that same fostering of education that we learned from our previous employer to our company, and promote our team to find classes that they can take to, achieve certifications, to go out and get their pesticide license, their hydraulics license, or their Class A driver's license. We typically bring them to conferences, when we can, and enroll them in classes for sales or for operations or for irrigation or whatever. I think we've done a pretty good job of just making sure the team's aware that if they want to learn something, we want to help them find an avenue to improve their education or better themselves in some form.
Gotcha. So, is there anything, if you could go back 10, 15 years ago and talk to the Doug who was working in your exact same, business then, is there any advice you would give him, when you were that smaller company? What advice would you, or what things would you perhaps, try to have done differently?
Yeah, I would have definitely sped up the shift to commercial earlier. I would have put more energy into that side of the business as quickly as possible, because I do think we we would be probably double the size that we are now if we had acted quicker. And thinking back to 10 years ago, I knew that was a path that I wanted to go down. I sort of inherently knew that that's where we should go and where we wanted to go from networking with other people in the industry, from learning from some of my mentors. I would verbalize that like that was the side of the business we wanted to grow. We just weren't doing it because we were so busy with the residential, so busy with the construction side, the design build. And so it was more fear based that we didn't make that decision because we thought we thought we could do both. We thought we could run the residential and the commercial at the same time and grow them both at the same time. Many people are successful at that. For us, it just didn't feel like it was going to be something that would work. So there was that fear behind it, but it was also just, we were just so busy doing the other work that we weren't putting our focus on really what we wanted and understanding like what our ultimate goals would be. We kind of knew it, we just weren't taking action.
Right. Makes sense. Are there any trends in landscaping that you're seeing that you're really excited about? Anything that you see on the horizon with landscaping that just makes you say, wow, this is going to kind of change things, or that you're really just intrigued about?
I'm excited about the mergers and acquisitions that are happening in the industry. And I say excited as not a positive or negative. It's just, I just think it's amazing what's going on right now. With the amount of private equity money that's being poured into our industry, I think it's really beneficial for those that want to have an exit and want to, be able to move on to either a different career or retire or whatever. I also think it's a huge opportunity for companies like ours to take some market share when there's fallout from those things, and also gain some really good employees and new team members from fallout from those acquisitions as well. So it's definitely an exciting time, and I think everyone in this industry should be in some way, shape, or form thankful that this is going on, because it brings a ton of value to our organizations and these companies that we've put blood, sweat, and tears into for many years. We know that there's value in them now, that there's this much private equity, and especially for those that want to do it soon, they can exit. But I also think it's a big opportunity for us to be able to grow within some of the challenges that come with that private equity money and the corporate kind of hierarchies and the maybe lack of communication and the missing culture pieces that you hear of. And it's not every one of them. I don't think all private equity is bad. I just think in general there can be some team members that don't want to be a part of it, and there can be some clients that feel some pain and stress from losing maybe the leader that was in charge of that company, or was their direct point of contact, or the person that they knew for years and years and years is no longer there, and it's a company based out of another state that's running this organization. There's naturally going to be communication issues with some of those situations, and if we can capitalize on those, that's great.
Okay, so in general, though, you view private equity as being good for the landscaping industry, not necessarily being bad. It's not, at least that's what I'm kind of taking away from what you said there.
I think so. I don't know. I don't think it's all good. I do think there's some things that are challenging for the clients. I think the challenge is that sometimes when those organizations come in, the client gets the bad end of the stick, I guess, if you will, without.
Well, and the employees too, a lot of times, right?
And the employees, yeah. So I do think there's some negative things to it. I don't know that it's all good. It's probably I just think in general the values of our companies have increased, which is
Right.
great.
Yeah.
That side of it's good, but I don't know that the end user is going to get a better product out of the private equity. I don't know that our team members and generally landscapers in general, landscape professionals, are going to have a better workplace from all the acquisitions that are going on.
Right.
And I also don't want to say all of them are bad, because I know some of them that are doing a rock solid job and are kicking ass with making acquisitions and improving the companies that they've been able to buy and acquire. But I've also heard the opposite story from some friends that have sold and haven't had great experiences with the private equity teams taking over.
Right. Right. Um, is there anything that I haven't asked that you'd like to kind of share with our listeners, or that you think is important to kind of mention?
Um, I think just in pertaining to to growth and team and so forth, and what I see out in the industry, I think we can all just do as much as we possibly can to focus on our team and focus on culture and focus on building organizations that people want to come to. I know there's been a shortage of landscape professionals for years now, probably 6-7 years. It's been a struggle to find people in our industry, and it's getting worse every year. And so I think in order to attract young people into our workplaces, we're all going to need to do a better job at making our places of work magnets for employees, and magnets for people that are looking for jobs. And so getting out there and talking to high school students, talking to college students, that's going to help if we all do a good job at that. But also just building really strong teams that appreciate your team members, and appreciate the fact that these people show up to work every day and bust their ass and do a great job, and showing them that recognition, creating cultures that sort of foster that education and people want to be there. I think that's going to help bring more people into the industry and make them stick, and maybe pull some people from other industries that we're competing against all the time in the sort of the service world. So yeah, I think that's my message.
Yeah. No, culture is so important, right? And it sounds like you've kind of cracked the nut on that, and that makes it easier to hire. It makes it easier to retain. Just having a strong culture. Is there anything specifically with culture? I mean, we talked about the open book management piece, and that piece. But is there anything you do in terms of just building culture that you think could be applied even to the much smaller companies?
I think in general, a lot of small companies do a pretty good job at it, because they're really connected with their team, because they have the owners are probably very accessible to the team members. I think it's when you start to get some managers involved that culture tends to take a little bit of a back seat sometimes, and isn't a focus. And we had that challenge years ago, and had to really refocus what we were doing, and making sure that Andy and I were driving that point home, that we wanted to make sure everyone enjoyed coming to work. So, small companies, just connect with your team, and making sure that you're asking them, how's your family doing? How's home life? How's work life? What can we do differently? At the size we are, which isn't huge, but it's big enough that there can be a little bit of a disconnect between some of the team members and some of the leadership team. We find surveys are a great tool. We're surveying our team every year, at least once, sometimes twice, and we're getting the results from the survey, and then we're talking to the team about it and saying, hey, we hear you, this isn't really going great, or this doesn't feel good, or this situation occurred. What can we do differently? And then here's our game plan to fix that, and let the team know that we hear them and we change things. So the surveys have been helpful. We do a lot of employee appreciation events, at least once. We do once a month, and then we do some little things here and there as well. We bring an ice cream truck in, or we'll hand out Gatorades at the gate when they're leaving the yard. But the appreciation events have been huge for Andy and I, just to be able to get out there and just mingle with the team and hang out. And every one of those appreciation events we have, someone will come up and grab my ear after a little bit and be like, hey, now that I got you, I wanted to tell you about what's going on with X, Y, and Z. Or I wanted to let you know, we need another, blower on our crew, or something. They'll just come up, and they feel comfortable coming up and talking to us about the situations that are going on and stuff that's bothering them, and we can kind of nip it in the butt right there. So I'm not quite sure if I answered your
No,
question, but
definitely.
that's what came to mind.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Doug, I can't thank you enough for coming on my podcast. It was very interesting hearing your perspective, and I think our listeners are going to come away with a lot of gold nuggets about what we talked about. Thank you so much.
Cool. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I appreciate you
Awesome.
having me on.
All right, thank you.